Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. My name's John Lunn, aka Jonnychipz, and today I'm joined by a technical recruiter that's based in South Wales in the UK. On that note, this In Conversation With is with David Sadler.
Uh,
Hi, Dave. How you doing? You all right?
yeah, I'm very good, John. Yourself?
Yeah, good. No, absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much for joining me there. You get the pleasure of seeing the outtakes and how you start off these videos firsthand. So we managed to get there in 2 takes. That's not too bad, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. No, not a problem. I'm really happy to be here. If I can share an experience and talk a little bit about our industry, then fantastic. But
Yeah.
brilliant to finally get the chance to sit down with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, for those of you that have followed these videos over the last sort of couple of months or so, I've tended to stick with the technical aspects of the industry. But David, we had a chat going back a couple of weeks ago now, and I thought it'd be just something a little different now to bring in the recruitment side of the tech industry. And obviously, we had a chat before we sat down to record this session now. Just about your experience, really, Dave. So I guess let's just start it off by, for those that are watching, if you just want to give yourself a bit of an introduction, what you're all about, where you're based, all that good stuff, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Yeah, as you said, technical recruiter. So I've got 15 years recruitment experience, and most of that has been in tech. So I've recruited thousands of technology professionals in Wales, in the Southwest, across the UK. I've been lucky enough to work for three pretty big businesses over the years. But in the last 4 months, I've taken the plunge, John, and gone on my own. So
Cool.
interesting time, but I feel that I've got a lot of experience that I can bring to a lot of people. I know the markets really, really well. I'm fairly technical. I never say I was a technical expert in any way, but I did a part computer science degree. I then moved on to more business and marketing, which is more in line with recruitment. But I've kept that understanding of tech. I'm very passionate about tech. I'm really interested in current trends. So I feel like I'm a little bit different, I would guess, to a lot of recruiters. I'm not your typical salesy recruiter. I kind of get to a level that other recruiters don't because I have that technical understanding and I also know what people are looking for and where they're looking to go. So I'm basically a technical recruiter by trade, and I specialize in not one particular area, but with current trends, there's a lot of push for like DevOps related cloud professionals. So as you are very, very relevant at the moment, got a lot of demand for that, which I'm sure we can talk about, as well as obviously the other cloud providers. But there's a big movement towards infrastructure as code and DevOps. So yeah, I tend to be more involved now in like DevOps, security, data science, all the things that you can imagine is current. That tend to be what I'm specialising in at the moment.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's a really apt thing to say, to be honest, Dave. I know we briefly spoke about it before, but I think if I relate it to what we're seeing, as a tech professional, if you like, in on that side of the fence, everything you just said kind of resonates quite strongly. How do you see it, Dave, with the companies that you're kind of recruiting for at the moment? Are they, I mean, I guess they're not looking for one particular set of skills, but there's always this joke that comes around is that they want a CV as long as your arm, and they want every single valid skill set up to date and contained within this utopian one person. What do
Yeah.
you see businesses looking for at the moment, and are they aware of what that might mean in the world of tech?
A very good question. I think the first thing to say is, and I was thinking about this yesterday, that what I see as a recruiter, I think companies want Mr. or Mrs. Perfect ultimately because they're paying for my services. So they want us to find a really good person. In answer to your question, there is this huge sort of cloud movement. We've moved away from, so I've done this for, like I said, 15 years. So I remember recruiting general Windows engineers through to sysadmin, and now obviously moving into DevOps. But there is so many companies going from sort of lift and shift into the cloud, and it's not just one industry. Every industry is adopting it. So from in Wales, manufacturing, public sector, there's a big push in financial services. So all I can say, John, really is there's most businesses I deal with are moving to the cloud. So they need those sort of cloud technical experts in some capacity or the other.
Mm-hmm.
The other sort of people I'm recruiting for at the moment are more consultancy. So people that are offering specific expertise in certain areas. So we're looking for people with like Azure experience with Terraform and infrastructure as code, all the things which I'm sure you know a lot better than I do. But we find that a lot of businesses tend to sort of go with the flow. So it's all, I think I said to you, when something comes out of Microsoft Build or a conference, then within 6 months, somebody wants those technical skills.
Sure.
So what I would say is I think most companies are going down the cloud route because I think it's most cost effective and the most productive way. Whereas there are a lot of consultancies now, certainly in Wales and the Southwest, that are offering specific technical experience, and that's where you're looking for the more specific containerization, infrastructure as code, and then they're looking at the AWS or the Azure or other cloud providers.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think, if we talk about, we've heard this terminology around there being a technical skills gap for, a long time, and looking into the future, it's still predicted that there is still this big void of kind of skill, I guess, in these areas. I guess you're on the coalface there, trying to recruit for these skills, trying to seek out these people. What's that like for you, David, at the minute? Are you seeing that firsthand, or is there a wash of unfound consultancy guys or technical guys out there and girls?
You probably know the answer to that too, John.
Well, I guess, yeah. Obviously, I look at it from the company that I work for at the minute, and we do struggle to find that caliber of person. I just wondering what you've seen and what changes you see the industry kind of moving towards at the moment to try and close that skills gap. I guess. You've got
a great question. I think it's a big conversation because ultimately you use the word skill shortage. There is a skill shortage, but the reason there's a skill shortage is that as soon as these skills come out into market, everyone's expected to have them, and then all of a sudden then there's no people with those skills. There's a big push to try and get existing people skilled up, if you like, and then there's a big lag, and there's not enough people. So supply is outweighing demand at the moment. Demand is outweighing supply, should I say?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of businesses right now that are crying out for cloud professionals, but there aren't enough people. So unless a company has gone through that transition and upgraded that person or that team's skill set, they don't have the skills, unless they obviously, and we can talk about sort of people going and doing their own training. So all the sort of resources that are available online. So there are shortages, and good people are well paid and well kept individuals. But there are businesses and there are initiatives out there like boot camps. I think the cloud providers, I think Microsoft and Amazon do sort of training online, and they work with businesses to get entry-level people. I guess what I'm saying is there's people out there with good skills, but they're well paid and well kept. But there aren't enough people coming through the system because academia has got to catch up, which takes time. And then there needs to be more openness from companies' point of view to not look for that perfect person. So if someone's come from a boot camp or a training program or has spent 6 months training themselves online, companies have got to be open to that. And the simple fact is, if they're not, they might have an open job vacancy for a long time.
Yeah, I think you've hit on a few really key points, again, that resonate with my own journey, if you like, from where I came from. So, I'll just kind of reflect on that a bit, and you can tell me if the industry is changing. But it used to be back, I'm of an age now, I'm talking 20 years ago now, but when I wasn't working in IT and I did want a job in IT, my first thought was, you got to have a degree. That's all everybody ever told me, is you need to have a degree. So I didn't do the traditional route of college to, into university. I was a mature student. I did it all through Open University, purely to get that little bit of paper and that line on my CV that says, right, I've got a degree. Is that still the case with a lot of businesses at the moment? Is that expectation that sort of degree educated is still a baseline requirement, or is that kind of starting to fluctuate a little bit, Dave, from your experience?
Yeah, the latter part of that is so true. It's evolving. So we did a talk. I did a talk with someone else last week, and we've almost got to move away from the CS degree. If you look for the perfect academic student, you're going to have a handful of people. If now COVID has shown that remote work can work as well. So these talented people in Wales, for example, could go and work all over the UK or all over Europe. So there's going to be even smaller shortage. There are businesses that are starting to look at it. There are training providers starting to look at boot camps, which I think is really important. They need fast access to talent, but they've got to be open to realizing they're not going to come with a perfect package. In answer to your question, I don't think you can afford just to want that computer science degree. Great if you can get it, but almost I still hear people say, but they haven't got practical experience. So it's catch-22. So I think, yes, there still is that desire, but I think people are starting to realize they need to be more open to people like went on the same journey that you did, or even school leavers, or even people from, I don't know, like the army, or things like other people that can go and sort of update and hone their skills, not from traditional routes, still need to be employable.
I think it's just about. I mean, from my perspective, it's about the attitude. It's about the attitude of that candidate, and that educational background. Yes, of course, there is a level of importance there, but I mean, I suppose the reason I kind of asked you that is to understand if the businesses you're dealing with are still holding that as the holy grail almost, to have a minimum of a computer science degree, and then this list as long as your arm of that technical skill set that they expect in that candidate. And you're right, those they're like unicorns. Yeah, I think we joked the other day they're like unicorns, those kind of people. And I guess they are in these well-paid positions. They're comfortable. They're happy where they are at the moment. And I guess from my own learning journey, I've seen a lot of people, and I get asked quite a lot of questions, surprisingly enough. People message me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, those kind of people that are just starting off the industry. Do you see that business is kind of open to those kind of new people into the industry that may not have that wealth of experience? Are you seeing any shift like that at the minute, Dave, in terms of the acceptance or the willingness for businesses to accept that kind of I don't want to use the word inexperience, but they come with lesser experience, I guess, in the role, and maybe not a university degree. I mean, where you mentioned that it's evolving. The businesses you speak to, are they open to that fact at the moment, or is it still very much a tricky conversation that you have?
Yes, at the moment. I think a couple of years ago, maybe not. I still think there was this ideology that you could find the person, they will be there if you pay enough. But now teams are getting bigger. There's more need for diversity as well. And I think, yes, there is a need. There is an openness now to look at other avenues. So the people that you're talking to, I would definitely be saying, look, it's not a closed door. There are a lot of companies that have got open minds. Although I still see businesses that are saying things like, you need to have worked with Azure for 2 years or 3 years, or a good experience of. You need to have detailed experience of Terraform. You need to have worked with Kubernetes for X amount of time. And we've almost got to move away from that a little bit, I think. If you really want to have good people, like you say, attitude is very, very important. I think we need to, yes, it's important obviously to get the right level of experience to do that job effectively. But I think, there needs to be a more openness to the type of experience somebody can have, and then almost a learning platform to get to where they need to be for that specific job at that specific company.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've kind of taken us on that next step, I guess, the conversation in terms of one thing that always resonates with me when I speak to people about what I do, these videos, what I do in a blog, is that whole traditional view of the world of saying, right, you've got this work and life balance, And I think it was Satya Nadella that said it quite a while back now, but the world is changing so quickly, and technology is advancing at such a rate of knots that my belief is that you need to factor in this work, learn, life balance. So you've got kind of this triangle of things that you need to factor in, and I guess that goes back to the businesses that you're recruiting for, whether they offer those learning platforms, that time to their employees to kind of do the whole go off and learn something new. I mean, does that typically get talked about during sort of candidate choosing stages or anything like that, or is that something that you kind of leave up to the businesses to discuss with the candidates in interview?
Happens all the time, John.
Yeah.
So you kind of alluded to like well-being. So there's a lot of businesses putting a huge amount of effort into employee well-being. So giving them time to go and do what they want, how they balance their sort of work-life
learning,
getting their work-life balance right. But I think in terms of technical training, if you like you mentioned, there's a lot of businesses that allow people to go and do their own thing for a while. I know a couple of companies that can say you can have your own time within a week to go and learn something or go and train yourself in something, or they bring people in to do like lunch and learns. So there's always this feast of information that people are learning, and they're almost acknowledging that they need to be developing people and they need to be giving people the time to develop themselves. So yes, I think it's very, very apt, and a lot of companies are doing that, especially in the technology space.
No, and I think you mentioned a few earlier on about the the resources that are available for candidates. If you're new to the industry, you're looking to go out and get a job. Maybe your first job, and you don't know where to turn. There's a raft of useful information. You've just got to jump on Twitter, do a search for free cloud learnings if that's the bit that you're looking at. Microsoft have got some great sites, Microsoft Learn, for example, and I know AWS do as well. They have some fantastic resources. So, I mean, I probably skipped over the elephant in the room, to be honest, David, in terms of having you on this show now just to talk about you from a recruitment point of view. I thought we could tackle it at a number of different levels, which we jumped straight into conversation to understand what the businesses you're dealing with are looking for from a a technical candidate point of view, but. Let's face it, the world of technical, sort of IT related work is rife with recruiters at the moment. I think a day doesn't go by where I don't have at least 2 or 3 emails in my inbox or on LinkedIn. What sets you apart? What's your kind of ethos towards trying to either entice people into better roles? How do you work, David?
Interesting. I think what sets me apart is I've done this for a long time. I've worked in businesses where everything is KPI driven, whereas you must send X amount of emails, you must speak to X amount of people, you must do all these deals. I understand why recruiters do it, because they have to. They work in businesses that is pressurized in terms of sales. But I'm well past that. Like I said, I'm 40 this year. So I've been through the journey of that. But more to the point, I understand where people are and I understand what it takes to move a job. It's not a transaction. It's feeling, it's emotion, it's a tough decision. It's a family decision. It's not just your own. So what makes me stand apart is my values. So I'm empathy, I'm a good communicator, no pressure, and I've got experience. I've done this for 15 years. I've placed thousands of people. I've been in the most ridiculously challenging situations and helped candidates through it. Sure. But I think the big thing for me is I understand what I do. So don't get me wrong, you must have seen, and it's not a criticism of recruiters, and I'm not here to do that, but you must have had inappropriate, badly written emails that offer you, I don't know, a mid-level AWS role or something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. I know what skills are out there. I know what's in demand, and I feel confident I can match well. So I'll know where someone is, and I'll know what companies are looking for, and I feel like I've got a skill in that, whilst also not being too pushy and understanding that the decision process takes time.
Sure, and do you know what, Dave? I was going to say, I'm sure there's a lot of people in my position with, of my age and my, I don't think we're too far away from each other, to be honest, Dave. But yeah, I think, there are certainly recruiters that I keep in contact with. Only, I'm not looking personally. I know this isn't a recruitment drive, but if I take it from my own perspective, I've been comfortable where I am for a number of years now, but I still get emails from the odd recruiter, and there absolutely are those recruiters that I will stay in touch with, because I think they possess those qualities like you just suggested there. It's not just a tick box exercise, spam people with as many jobs that are insignificant to maybe some significant relevance to that candidate. It's about having that relationship, I guess, and understanding where you are. So I guess that's what you're looking to build at the moment, David. I mean, you've got your own business now from a recruitment perspective. I mean, how's that going for you at the moment? You mentioned that you've branched off on your own now. How is all that going?
Crazy. It's an interesting time to do it in the pandemic. Some people would say I'm crazy, which is fair enough. It's what happened, and I'm sure lots of people will know this, but I wear every hat possible now. So I go from recruiter on LinkedIn, speaking to people, doing sessions like this, and then I'll have to look at finance, or I do a video on marketing, so it's super exciting and super challenging, but it's all about prioritizing my time now. So I need to be on it 24/7, really. You mentioned about communication. So I've got relationships with people that I've had for 12 years, 13 years. And it's really, really important to me that I keep them. So the amount of people I hear say, recruiters never contact me if I don't get the job, or I can't tell you that person's name that placed me in that job. I find that hugely frustrating. What I'm sure, like, if you spoke to people in the industry, they should know who I am, but I still call people that I placed 10 years ago and say, look, I need some help. And they're like, oh, it's Dave. Yeah, I'll have that chat with him. And I'm sure the people that you stay in touch with probably do that as well. They've got that sort of network and that sort of way about them. And I think that's the key to long-term success, and hopefully for my business and me in recruitment.
No, absolutely. I don't disagree one iota. I think that's, it's like you say, it's a very human thing, whether you've been like myself, you're in a job for quite a long period of time, just lifting your roots up and moving to another job isn't always that straightforward. And I guess, sometimes recruiters can get frustrated. I'm sure businesses can as well when they got a candidate that's and ahhing. But I guess it's, that's the kind of challenges that you face on a fairly regular basis, I guess, Dave. It's very difficult for people I don't know. So when I go and send someone a message or an email or something, they don't know me in any way. So that's the challenge. The challenge is trying to get my personality and my experience over in written or video communication. But all I want people to do is give me a shot, because I know I'm good at what I do, and I've got good networks and I've got good information. No, absolutely. I mean, if it's all right with you, I mean, can we change focus slightly on sort of, those people looking to get into the industry at the minute, Dave? I mean, I'm sure you see no end of CVs and you have to sift through them. I mean, I guess that's part of the job that you do. That is, quite a painstaking piece of work when you're trying to find, like you say, you're trying to match somebody for a specific job. But I mean, have you got any good insights, good tips? What makes a good CV, that kind of thing, and maybe talk to us a bit about social media and does that affect a candidate in any good or negative way?
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to write some notes. So I did a session with the Software Academy, the Cardiff University Software Academy, last week on CVs. And I think, firstly, people have got to understand that it's not easy to write a good CV. And it takes probably a bit of research online to get the structure right. But I think a couple of tips that I have really is... certainly if we're talking the Azure space, for example, so I put your certifications at the top. Most people have this historic view that training goes at the bottom with education. But actually, I've seen CVs with actual images at the top with like Azure Architect or other sort of qualifications. So if you want to put images on, great. But a lot of people do keyword searches. So I want to see people's qualifications after their personal summary or even above it, because that's a major selling point. So that's one. The second thing I think I would give advice to people is, I see a lot of people put all their skills at the top or in their personal summary, but when they write about what they do in their company, they don't mention those skills.
Sure.
So I still hear clients say, well, did he or she do this in this company? They can't. Sometimes people don't make that correlation between if it says it at the top with years of experience to did they actually do it in that job with that company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know what you're saying. So yeah, there's no point just putting a raft of skills at the top of your CV if you then say, I went on and did something completely unrelated, in your latest job, I guess. You try and relate the skills that you're saying you've got to your working experience and pick out some, key projects or key things that you may have done with that company, I guess.
Absolutely. And that's what I was going to say. So listing key projects within those companies. But if you're a graduate or you're an entrant into the market, just list a successful project or a successful course that you did, whatever. But you've got to be highlighting your successes. We did a session on bias as well last week, which I think is quite important and apt right now. So I think what I would be looking to tell people is I've seen photos on CVs. I don't like it. I understand why people do it, but you're moving into the grounds of bias then. So I would remove photos. I'd remove date of birth. I'd remove marital status, because you don't want to give companies, and they also, I know now, from talking to a lot of people, they don't want this either. You don't want to give them the opportunity to make a biased decision.
Okay.
So I think that's really interesting and good advice. And I think the last thing is, I don't want to see anything more than 3 pages. I understand there will be people of all experience that have, I don't know, like us, 10, 15 years experience. I think if it's relevant, put it in. But anything over 10 years, I would simply have previous experience, company, date, and that's it. I wouldn't put any more information.
Yeah, sure. I guess you're talking about the stuff that you may have done that, even if it is in the tech industry, arguably it's possibly not relevant because technology evolves maybe. So you want to talk about the latest and greatest stuff, I guess, is what it boils down to, isn't it?
And I think what people have got to understand, so 2 things really. One, people just roll out CVs all the time. They just like, I've got my CV, I'll send it to a recruiter or I'll send it to a company. There are so many specifics in a job description now in technology that, again, as I keep mentioning, is evolving. So your CV's got to keep evolving as well.
Yeah. So
there is a need now to almost, I would suggest people look at adverts or get job descriptions and then look at how their CV looks once they've seen that information. I think that's really important. And that way, you're obviously more likely to get to the interview or to the next stage. Whereas if you just send an old CV, 1, you don't look interested necessarily, and 2, it's not best matched for that job. So it just takes a bit of time, which is, like you said, can be arduous, but I just think people need to be tailoring, not necessarily lying, but tailoring CVs to the jobs in hand.
Well, I guess it's just using what you know is your own experience, and like you say, tailoring it to suit what that particular business happens to be looking for. I think, you've echoed some brilliant tips there, Dave, in terms of getting your CV to act in the best way possible, just basically to get you through the door and get you face to face, I guess, with the interviewer.
Absolutely.
On that note, Dave, how big a part do you find social media plays? Clearly in today's world, and especially even more so now, a lot of interaction goes across Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, even things, we've got Discord now, we've got TikTok, we've got all of these different platforms at our disposal. In your experience, do recruiters, do a little bit of research themselves when they find a candidate, and should we all be thinking about what our public-facing persona looks like?
Really interesting. I think, sorry, you asked me about the CV and then social media, but my advice on social media is put out things that you are willing for people to see. So ultimately, if your Facebook is more personal and it's more about your friends or more about, I don't know, personal things, don't put that link on your CV.
Yeah.
If your CV, if your Twitter is quite akin to your network and groups that you're part of and your technical experience, then put it in. So I think, yes, from a candidate and a sort of graduate point of view, I would suggest putting their social profiles on. But more than that, they need to be, and this is something I said, you need to be sharing how your experience and your content. And what I mean by that is like GitHub or Stack Overflow. So you can actually showcase how good you are. So that's one part of it. Second question is, do recruiters look at people's social media? I guess they do. Do I? Probably not. I kind of trust people at face value over a conversation, but if I wanted to, what stops me?
No, exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think it is upon the person to put online what they're willing for other people or anybody to see. Do recruiters do it? I'm sure they do. And do companies do it? I'm sure they do.
I suppose, you just to pick you up on one point you raised there, especially in the tech world now, and like you say, with infrastructure as code and that whole DevOps world moving closer together. GitHub. I mean, it's a fantastic sort of code repository, version control system. If you're not, if you've not used GitHub, start using it to do some of the mundane things. Because, like you say, David, I mean, it's a great piece of sort of advice there. It helps to showcase the kind of things that you may be working on in your own time. So, yes, we can use Git and we can just store files and bits and pieces on our computers. But if you get into the habit, set yourself up with a GitHub account, check your code in, and you'll see there's some fun and interesting things that you can do with GitHub to actually make it that online part of your CV potentially, so that recruiters and people looking for those technical skills could potentially go and have a little look through it. Do you see many candidates doing that at the moment, Dave, in terms of getting them through the door?
Yes, a lot more. So I guess specifically it'll be software engineers or software developers ultimately. But you'll be amazed at how many hiring managers or directors of businesses will go and look at your GitHub profile. If you put it on LinkedIn or you put it on your CV, you're making it available to people. So they will tend to go and look at it. And I don't think there's any better way of proving your experience, because ultimately a CV is words that you come up with to talk about your experience. But people want evidence, really, don't they? So I would be strongly suggesting, if it's a good, strong piece of code or a good project or whatever, put it on there and make it available to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I picked up on that. I mean, I've certainly, seen a lot more people using GitHub in the ops world now for not necessarily software. So I guess that's where that blurred line comes over now, and all of a sudden you've got this mash of different skill sets needed over the last few years, and I guess pushing that skills gap even more so, because I've spoken with a few guests on this show before, but you've got that traditional infrastructure operations person now having to learn how to code and learn what Git is, and that's never had to happen before. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's just an interesting concept with what's going on in the world of technology. So it's just interesting to see how that plays out into your world from a recruitment point of view. But yeah, I mean, so in terms of what you've got going on then, I mean, we've talked around, obviously cloud skills. Obviously, you're a technical recruiter. For a while now, personally, I've heard around, obviously we know that AWS has got the stronghold in terms of footprint, in terms of businesses that use their platform. And we've seen that Microsoft is slowly catching up from, if not getting close to that kind of level with Azure at the moment. How does that translate into the recruitment world, in terms of just your experience, David, in terms of AWS versus Azure versus G Cloud and any other cloud?
Yeah, I was having that conversation last week. So you're absolutely right. Is it easier to find AWS engineers than Azure specific engineers? Yes. Because I guess of the market share, which is readily available to look at. But what we're finding at the moment really is that candidates, if you like, tend to want to be agnostic. So they want to. This is historically, though, and I'll talk a little bit more about how that's changing. But I think when cloud as a sort of as a service came through, I think people were sort of exposed to whatever the company chose to use in terms of cost or efficiency. So Microsoft, or like I said, or Google, or Amazon. But now what I'm starting to see, certainly with the consultancies, is expertise in certain areas. And that's where I think Microsoft is starting to pick up a little bit, because people are choosing to be Azure experts rather than AWS experts.
Sure.
Do they have to catch up slightly? Yes. But are there businesses that are choosing the Microsoft ecosystem over Amazon? Yes. And then these people will have to get skilled up, if you like, to become more specialists. So I don't know if that answers the question as well as I hoped, but there is a lag potentially, but they are catching up. But I would say there's more of a push to go towards vertical cloud experts now, rather than your hybrid, which I think historically people have had.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept as well, because I guess there's no right or wrong way for businesses to recruit him, because I guess the reason I brought that question up is that, within my own work at the moment, there's very much, like you suggested, this talk of being cloud agnostic. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I mean, to say it as it is, it sounds great. It sounds that you're being inclusive and you're kind of edging your bets. Yeah, if you've got something to do with the cloud, then yeah, we've got somebody that can do something with that. But when you filter that through and boil it down to what does that mean for that particular candidate, what job do they have to do, I personally struggle to take anybody seriously if they say that they're a multi-cloud expert, because I don't even consider myself to be an Azure expert, really, because of the broadness of the platform and the capabilities technically that you can do, and you can go into a business and transform that business. So I'm just intrigued to understand if businesses out there are looking for that. I suppose that the broader your skill sets go, the higher level you go in conversation with customers or business to do what you need to do. But at some point, the rubber has to hit the road, and something has to get done. So that's when you need that technical, subject matter expert. So I suppose just on my own journey, it's interesting to see where does that line get drawn, and you've just thrown into the mix that vertical expert there as well, which is another way of looking at it as well. I mean, I suppose the question I've got in all of that is that you mentioned briefly the types of roles that you've got, but in terms of, I suppose, that the vertical view of those roles from high level, which I guess is your, from a sales, a pre-sales, and then down into technical skills like architecture and consultancy and, sort of cloud engineers. How are you seeing? Are you seeing any kind of key areas growing more than others at the moment, David, within your experience?
I think it's a bit broader than that, John, in the fact that I think you've got to categorize it as like consultancies and in-house. So if you look at like a manufacturing organization or a public sector organization, I think they they don't tend to have experts. They tend to have like almost a sysadmin cloud engineer that learns their craft while they're there.
Yeah.
But in answer to your question, I think that's more geared around the experts. So the consultancies will, exactly as you said, go from engineer to mid consultant, senior consultant, architect, team lead. And the demand that we're seeing at the moment on the in-house side is your cloud engineer. So somebody mid-level, senior in experience as a cloud engineer. Whereas the consultancy side, there is huge demand for more expertise, because I guess they sell those services. So you're looking at your senior consultant or your technical architect, so somebody that can go into a business, can look at their infrastructure and their landscape and think, right, we can come in and do X, Y, and Z. So I think in-house, it'll be very much your engineer status, whereas your consultancies and your sort of systems integrators will be looking for more high-level technical architecture.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I guess it's really interesting, how I kind of tried to keep up with how things have gone in terms of what the technology is meant to be doing, I guess, to all of our lives, which, if I take the Microsoft view, it's around the classic, empowering people and business to be able to achieve more. And I've always taken that to mean, if you're not in the tech arena, which arguably every company is now a tech company,
Yeah.
You want to focus on what that business does and what that business does well, which may be making widgets or maybe, some financial services. Are you still seeing that heavy drive into, individual businesses to build up their internal IT tech teams to produce their digital goods? Are you seeing that as a large growth area at the moment in recruitment, David? Or do you see it more that people are reaching out to partners and third-party companies to help those businesses build those solutions? How does that look to you at the moment?
We see both ultimately. I think now in the last couple of months, I think now I've started this business, I've seen a lot of businesses are trying to bring it in-house. I think they see that they need that capability. I would say 5 days a week, but it could be 24/7 support. Then they would have a contingency. So they won't necessarily have as big a support contract, but they will have a support contract as a contingency. So I guess, like I said, in answer to your question, I think there's more people trying to bring it in-house, but the bigger the company and the more users they have and the more infrastructure they need, there is that consultancy push. So I would say there is always that need for the SI and the consultancies, and especially with the bigger companies that are looking for that digital transformation.
Yeah, sure. I can imagine, like you say, some of the large public sector customers, large financial services, and like you say, that the large enterprise business is absolutely, in my mind, it kind of makes a lot of sense to have your own internal teams doing all this work for you. I guess when you come down to the kind of sort of small enterprise, even to the large orgs, small business arena, it almost, in my experience, it's difficult, I guess. I would assume, anyway, not that I know, but I'd assume it'd be difficult to entice talent into those businesses because if you're, like me, you're a technical person, you enjoy and you get, sort of motivated by new technology, and you're looking to go into a single business, really that kind of closes the arena to a lot of technical things that you might not realize you want to play with at the moment, but you might want to get involved with. And in turn, my assumption is that kind of, squashes any potential future position that you may or may not want. Do you know what I mean? Is that if you're working for one business, and I certainly found this when I transitioned over from working from a manufacturing business and I moved over into the world of consultancy, all of a sudden you're seeing, the plethora of ways that you could do the same thing. So typically, I mean, do you have those kind of conversations with candidates, or do people just not look at it as deeply as me?
No, I think you're absolutely spot on, John, ultimately. By going to smaller businesses that have smaller users and less technical capability, I guess they are sort of restricting themselves potentially in terms of skills and experience. But there's more to it. Sometimes people don't just make decisions based on technology. They'll base it on well-being or salary, location. So that, on one hand, it's that. But if I'm going to tempt somebody who is looking for a senior engineer or a consultant or a technical architect, one thing I'm asking a client constantly is, what's the technology? Not just now, but where are you going? What are you looking to do? And you're right. Candidates are really looking for that technical advancement, and the more they go up the sort of the ladder, the more apt that is. I'm in my communication to candidates, I'm constantly talking about, you could get involved in this, you could get involved in that. They've got this project doing this, they've got this project doing that. You could get involved with this client or that client. So yes, but there's still a need for that in-house person that is happy doing what they want to do with the people within those businesses.
No, absolutely. I mean, great answer, I guess. It's one of those things where it's just interesting to see the landscape, and there's so many different variables. Like you alluded to earlier on, it's not a simple black and white decision whether you're going to take job A, job B, whether you're going to move from a long-term job. There are a number of factors that boil into it, and then I guess you mix into that big mixing pot all the technical skills that one person is meant to have, or maybe not have, but is meant to be the kind of font of all knowledge in those respects. And you've got yourselves quite a complicated thing there, haven't you, Dave, basically?
Absolutely. I think But this stems back to what I said at the start. Businesses need, when they go to market, they need to understand what they want and what they need. And I think that can't be underplayed, because if you really want somebody who's got coding experience and can do infrastructure as code, then put it down. But don't just put it as a wish list, because it's going to put people off potentially. So I think it's really important to understand exactly what skills you need to do that job when you're there. I still think there's a need to put everything as a laundry list or a wish list, just because that's what Microsoft have said that you need, for example.
Yeah, I guess it's that thing, isn't it? It's been it goes back to your point earlier when you said, don't just put, because a job is advertising, you need skills 1 to 10. Don't just put them on your CV unless you can really demonstrate them, or I guess discuss why you're not looking at it would be another a reason. Why do you feel you're not looking at that particular technology? You might be able to open the eyes up to that particular potential employer, to say, give them a bit of insight if you're that confident, I guess. But
that's a good point, in terms of what I should have said really about, like, if you're looking at a smaller, and I use the word in-house, there's probably a better term for it, but your standalone IT person or your small team, they may have a major say in the decisions of the business. They could be the influencer in terms of the directors choosing to go to the cloud and the tools that they use. Whereas when you go for a consultancy, that might all be done for you.
Yeah.
So you've got to weigh that up as well.
No, absolutely. I think there is so many different ways to kind of look at this. It's been a really insightful chat, to be honest, Dave. I mean, how do we get hold of you? Obviously, I've got your Twitter handle on the screen there. Have you got a website or anything like that we can get hold of you at?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is www.sadlerrecruitment.co.uk. Just looking if I can bring that up now.
There we are.
There it is. Yeah. So yeah, it's all my vacancies are listed on there. I'll tell you a bit about how I would work with you as a candidate. So some client testimonials on there from the years of experience. There's a couple of blogs which sort of illustrates, I know what I'm doing, and I share your thoughts in terms of moving jobs. But yeah, enough of the sales pitch. I'm on LinkedIn. The website is sadlerrecruitment.co.uk, and I'd love to chat to people to see what they're up to and see if I can help.
No, absolutely, David. Well, it's been a really insightful chat. I mean, have you got any last sort of parting words of wisdom you want to impart on me before we break away?
No, thank you. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I'd like to help in the sort of Microsoft movement in Wales and the Southwest. I think it's really, really important. I think my sort of takeaway for people is, what a great time to be in technology. The pandemic, for all its horrible situation that it's brought, it has brought the demand for more technology. So what a time to be in technology. You're changing lives and helping people, but the opportunities right now are crazy, and salaries are only going up, opportunities are going up. So you're in a good space, and I look forward to seeing how people get on, really.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, David. I think, you've summed it up quite well. But honestly, thanks so much for today, and thanks so much for giving your time up. Obviously, we'll get this out to the community now, and see if we can help some people out with some of those great sort of insights that you've given to us. So, on that note, thanks so much for joining me, David. That's been fantastic.
No problem, John. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Appreciate it.